Hello and welcome back to the Comic Books Matter podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Peterson, and I'm bringing you today another comic book that has impacted my life. I'm doing this podcast once again to kind of make a bright spot into the world that's kind of dark right now. But not only that, show a big, show how the comic book world has influenced me, especially while they're struggling right now. But one thing I really wanted to focus on in this show is all comic books matter. Any version of comic books, manga, graphic novel, single issue, comic strips, web comics, all of them matter. It depends on what's changed your life or impacted you for the better. And since I really wanted to dwell on that, the second episode here is going to be about a comic strip that really impacted my life, and it's still impacting my life every time I reread it, and I did some rereading of it this week, and that is Calvin and Hobbes by Bill Waterson. Everybody basically knows Calvin and Hobbes, but to be a brief synopsis of it, it's about a young boy named Calvin. I believe he's 6 years old, and his stuffed tiger, Hobbes, who he believes is real. And I believe is real, honestly. I think everybody else is making up that he's stuffed. But yeah, so the thing about Calvin and Hobbes is I don't remember when I first started reading it. When I used to go to the library all the time, I would just grab tons of volumes of comic strips with my mom, and we would read them together all the time. I read, I'm drawing a blank. Hold on. I'll come up with it. Well, I read Zits. I read Far Side. I read Peanuts. I might even talk about Peanuts later down the road. I have tons of Foxtrot volumes. I love Foxtrot. I read Garfield, of course. Every kid read Garfield for a little bit. I read, I think it's called Every Rose Has a Thorn, even though I know that's like, I'm forgetting the name of the band who sang that song too. But I read a lot of comic strips with my mom. But the one that I've always collected, next to Foxtrot and Peanuts, was Calvin and Hobbes. I have every single Calvin and Hobbes volume, and I have the big volumes too. I haven't got the whole hardback collector's edition thing yet, but I'm working on it. But Calvin and Hobbes was just so impactful to me because it captured what it was like to be in my brain at that age, and now honestly still at this age I lose myself like Calvin does every day to an imaginative world, to being like a space adventurer or some detective who's on a noir case or just anything. And I'm fascinated by TV and how it tells stories. I'm fascinated by my parents and the way they function as adults, even though I'm an adult myself at being 26. Calvin and Hobbes encapsulates everything being a kid really is, but since Bill Waterson was an adult when he was writing it, it has that flip side that's really cool and important, where it has everything inside of it too for being an adult, or an adult with a kid's heart still. And it made me think differently reading it every single year as I was growing it up. I would reread these constantly. I think this is the longest between rereads. It's been a while, probably since I was 24, 23 was the last time I cracked these open and read them through all the way. And I gotta say, like, rereading them now, it's 26. Again, not a huge age difference, but it's been a bit different. It's funnier in a lot of ways, but also at the same time, it's way more cynical than I remember it being. Let me find one that I really enjoyed. I should have earmarked these, but I don't want to ruin this copy more than I already have. Let me see. Oh yeah, so this one's really funny. And I know I'm describing a visual media on a podcast, but it's funny to me. This is Calvin's father speaking for the most part, for the first two panels. Panel 1. Calvin, your mother and I have decided to give you an allowance. It's important that one learns the value of money. Those are the first two panels. Panel 3. Calvin just hunched over, like, rubbing his hands like a greedy man. Money, haha, I'm rich. I could buy anyone. The world is mine. And he just keeps on muttering this. Power, friends, prestige, blah, blah, blah. And that just shouts back, honey, I blew it again. And if that's not a good analogy for a kid or even a young adult getting into the workforce and getting money for the first time, I've blown so much money on junk I didn't need because I had it, and I'm like, oh, money, I can do whatever I want. And then my dad was always telling me, hey, you should really focus on this, learn how to use it as an adult, etc., etc. And these are the kind of lessons that are just scattered throughout Calvin and Hobbes, and I see them in my life every single day. And it's just insane that Bill Waterson was able to encapsulate, I said that word again, encapsulate every essence of being a human or a growing kid to an adult into 5 volumes of comic strips. It's really insane to me. And so that's why I wanted to make it my second one, because when I was looking at my shelf, I'm like, what else has impacted me more than anything? And I just saw the Calvin and Hobbes books. I'm like, of course. I don't know. I've read all of them back to front hundreds of times at this point. They have to be impactful to me. And so I just love that the media itself, this form of comic books. I mean, we get impacted by movies, music, art, like paintings and such all the time. They move us. They make us cry. They make me cry all the time. But to read a comic strip or to read a comic book and watch, and you have to move the action. You're moving the action. Your eyes are moving the action. Usually it's either a still thing. Like with paintings, it's still, and you're just examining it. With the music, movies, TV, video games, you have some interactions with it, but the thing's really leading you through it all. But with comics, you're guiding the comic. You can read it front to back, back and front, upside down if you want to. There's some comic books that like push you to do that. And with that, it makes these special in a lot of ways. And what makes Calvin and Hobbes so special is that it was the same scenario for the most part, over and over again, or at least the same 5 scenarios. Calvin making fun of Susie, Calvin talking to his parents tricking him not wanting to do something they wanted him to do. Just the same kind of scenarios. But the jokes and the dialogue were different, and they had different meanings through every year. The comic aged with you. You can read it 100 different times and get 100 different meanings out of it. And this is just a comic strip. I'm not saying comic strips are like a lower form of comics at all. I'm just saying a lot of people don't think about them like other comic books. And I think that really needs to change. I know like big comic writers like Tom King, like he loves Peanuts because Peanuts can give you that emotional thing in 3 panels. Calvin and Hobbes can give you an emotional gut punch in 3 to 4 panels. It's amazing. And to be able to have such craftsmanship over those short amount of time basically you have with a comic is just, it's masterful. And I wish I could talk to Bill Waterson about this, because I would love to pick his brain about how he structured these things, how he crafted this world and just played with it, and how did he keep his mind from getting cynical so Calvin didn't get like bitter. Like Calvin's cynical, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of cynical Calvin and Hobbes comic strips, but Calvin was never bitter like we can be as adults. Or even we could be as kids at times, but Calvin was never bitter at the world. He was just questioning the world. And you've asked yourselves the same questions that Calvin's asked in these books. It's just impressive. It's extremely powerful to me. I didn't think I was going to be able to talk through all that so quickly. I'm looking at the time here. It's only been about 8 minutes, closer to 9. But, I mean, I'm talking to myself right now. It's a little harder to talk to myself. But yeah, I hope these episodes, when they're coming out, touch you and they connect to you with what I think the art form can really give. And like I said with Calvin and Hobbes, but like I said with the episode before with Rebirth and Countdown to Infinite Crisis, those books made me cry because I felt like I lost a friend when I read them. And with Calvin and Hobbes, I don't think I've ever cried while reading Calvin and Hobbes, but I know I've gotten emotional, so emotional that I had to put it down and stop reading for the day. Because it pushed me to think about my life and who I was and who I wanted to become. And I think that's what all good art does. It pushes you to think about yourself, to self-reflect and see yourself in the art for the most part. Art pushes you to think about where the art was created and how it was created in that environment. And I think that's really important. It's something that we lose in society for the most part today, is self-reflection and how we relate to others. Comic books are great way to learn empathy in a lot of ways. I know there's a section of comic book fans with quotations around it that don't want to see inclusion, that don't want to see characters grow, change. They don't want to see inclusion with the creators. And those people are cynical or closed off to something special, I think, in a lot of ways. It's really special what comics are there for. And the comics are there to learn empathy for others you don't know, for people you can't walk in their shoes, for people who are different than us. That's important. And it's something comics do really well. In a comic strip like Calvin and Hobbes, about a 6-year-old boy and his imaginary stuffed tiger, his parents, his teachers, his bully, and the girl he kind of has a crush on, can teach you everything about the world. And if that's not crazy to you, it's crazy to me. And I love it for it. I love it so much for it. Well, thank you for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoy it. You can find this podcast. Should be on all major podcast platforms. Hosting on Anchor. Thank you, Anchor, for letting me host it on you. I don't know if they will ever listen to this, but still thanks. The opening and closing theme for this episode is by, let me remember, David Szesztay. The name of, Szesztay. I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing his last name wrong, and I feel really bad. I'm sorry, David, if you ever hear this. It's called Joy in the Restaurant, and I got it from freemusicarchive.com. Cover art is by my friend Steven. Steven still does nothing to promote, but when he does, I will make sure to plug it here. And if you see Steven, say, nice art, man. You can reach me at on Twitter. That's currently one of two places you can reach me. On Twitter at Comics Matter Pod. COMICSMATTERPOD. You can tell me if you like the episode. You can follow me when I retweet artists or talk about what I'm reading. You can message me about what comics impacted you, and I can read them on the air if you want me to, or if you just want to talk about it. But another thing I'm really excited to announce is I worked hard, not super duper hard, but I worked all night last night on it. I launched a Patreon. It's nothing big. It's very small. There's only one tier. It's for $1. It's really there for another platform for me to interact with you guys if you want to interact. But if you want to support this and slowly help me build a reputation where I can get like creators and artists and who knows on here to talk about how comic books impacted their life, you can sign up for $1. That's all I'm asking. It's just $1. And again, I know it's hard right now. You don't have to give me $1. This is just there to start off. I have one goal for $100 is $150. You know, I should know this. But I don't know this. It's my page and I don't know this. $50. Because I want to start building savings to getting a new laptop to record this better. To get new equipment. I have some new equipment on the way. It's not here yet. Hopefully it'll make it sound better in a few weeks. But yeah, it's just that. And let me get you what the RSS is. I believe it's patreon.com/comicbooksmatter. If it's not that, I'll be in the link in the show notes for it. So just look for that. I want to thank you all again for listening and read some comics and relate to people. Find empathy for others. Have a good night.